Oh, there we go. Well, good evening, everyone. How are we doing? Good. Excited to be here. I'm excited to see you all here. Well, welcome to Mindful Leadership. This presentation and convocation is brought to you by the True Blue Institute Leadership Program, which is coordinated by Jenny Hemingway, who's Associate Dean of Students, Jessica Flynn, Assistant Dean of Students, Kelly Poole, Executive Director of CREL, Tim McGee, our Campus Chaplain and Interim Director of OD, and myself, Jessica Edonic, Dean of Students. We are just really excited to bring this presentation to you and learn from Pandit Dasa, who I'll introduce in one moment. But first, as a reminder, this is a convocation and you will need to complete a reflection form. I know it's your favorite thing to do following this convocation. You can also ask questions at the end of the presentation in two different ways. One, there's a QR code up there. So if you want to capture that with your phone and send in a question, we will ask the question for you. Or at the end, you can also come up and use this very microphone and ask your question, because we'd love to hear from your own voice some of your thoughts about what Mr. Dasa has to share with us. So without further ado, it is my honor to introduce to you Pandit Dasa. Pandit is a mindful leadership expert, motivational keynote speaker, and author. Pandit helps organizations improve employee engagement, retention, and workplace happiness. He does this by inspiring organizations to create a mindful workplace culture, by encouraging his audiences to lead by example, appreciate the contributions of their colleagues, communicate mindfully, and manage one's emotions. He helps individuals develop positive leadership qualities, lower stress and anxiety, increase focus and productivity, and boost emotional intelligence. He also engages the audiences in various breathing and focusing exercises that individuals can implement at work and at home to boost focus and clarity. In his book, Urban Monk, Pandit writes about the turning point in his life that came after his family lost their multi-million-dollar business, which ultimately led him to live as a monk for 15 years in New York City. That's a long time. Pandit has spoken at TEDx conference and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, PBS, NPR, the New York Times, Psychology Today, and writes for the Huffington Post. And recently he was featured in Forbes magazine. Please help me welcome Mr. Pandit Dasa.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? So since it was mentioned that I spent 15 years living as a monk, anytime anybody hears that, the first most natural question is, why'd you become a monk? And now that I'm not a monk, people want to know, why am I not a monk anymore? So first it was, why am I a monk? And now, why am I not a monk? So I figured I can start by telling you a little bit of my own journey and story on how I came to this point on speaking about mindfulness, mindful leadership. So I grew up in Southern California. My parents migrated from India to the US in 1980. They came over with little to nothing. And one of the first things that they did was they set up a small shop on Venice Beach, California. How many have been to Venice Beach? No one's been to Venice Beach, only a couple people. Okay, you guys got to get out a little bit, you know? So they were literally working 7 days a week. They would just set up a small shop selling gift items. I was 7 years old. I was just exploring Venice Beach. I was exploring America and everything Venice Beach had to offer, the beach, the basketball, the hip hop music, the skateboarding, the pizza, everything that Venice Beach had to offer. Not everything, has a lot to offer. I wasn't exploring everything, just some things. And so it was a lot of hard work and a lot of luck, because I think that we need both to succeed, right? Because a lot of people work hard, but sometimes you need a little bit of luck, good karma, whatever you want to call it. So with a lot of hard work and some luck, my parents were able to establish a multi-million-dollar jewelry business in Los Angeles. So things were really great. That was within an 8-year period. So we began living the American dream much faster than we expected to. We didn't expect that to happen to us. So everything was great. We were living in a house on the hills of Los Angeles, pool, jacuzzi, like everything. But then in the early 1990s, my parents' jewelry business actually caught on fire. And the factory burnt down, and we ended up losing everything. We're almost completely broke. At that time, my dad decided to explore new business opportunities, because we're starting all over again. And he looked for new business opportunities in post-communist Bulgaria. I'm guessing since you guys haven't been to Venice Beach, you haven't been to Bulgaria, right? So post-communist Bulgaria in the early 1990s, to give you an idea what it was like, no one spoke English. Like, that's not an exaggeration. People just did not speak English. Everything on TV was either in Bulgarian or in Russian. All the movies were about 5 or 6 years old in the theaters, because I don't think American movies were allowed at that time. And, I loved playing basketball, tennis. None of that was available. And there was no internet at that time, too. I know that's something you can't even imagine. It's almost like saying, hey, there was no oxygen at that time. So you can imagine the kind of shift and the turbulence I went through in my life, going from like the 90210 lifestyle to that, where I can't even have a conversation with anyone. I can't watch TV. There's no internet. So that gave me a lot of time to think about life, right? When things don't go right in our life, we naturally ask ourselves a question: why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? When's it going to end? Why me? Right? I think we've all asked ourselves that question. So I was asking myself that question a lot, because my life had turned upside down. And that is the time when I started practicing mindfulness, started practicing meditation, started reading some books on Eastern wisdom, just to figure out what life was about. What does this all mean? Why is this happening? We spent 2 years in Bulgaria, and the country was a little unstable because of the shift in the government. So we moved back to the US in 1995, roughly. And then in 1999, I realized that I just needed to take some time for myself and figure out how I wanted to spend the rest of my time. Like, how do I want to live in this world? How do I want to contribute to this world? So I decided to go to a monastery in Mumbai, India. Anyone been to Mumbai, India? Okay. So the plan was to be there for a month, live in a monastery, live with monks, meditate, go inward, figure myself out. When I got there, it was 40 monks living in the monastery. Everyone slept on a hardwood floor. No mattresses, no beds, no bunk beds. Everybody had a thin straw mat. Like that was it. Everybody had a closet that was like 3 feet by 3 feet. That was it. That's all the possessions you were allowed. I was living out of a suitcase because they didn't have a space for me. There wasn't a guest room. So I'm sleeping on the floor for the very first time in my life. Everybody woke up at 4 in the morning. The bathrooms are communal. There was 7 bathrooms for 40 monks. And we're meditating from 5 to about 7 or 8 o'clock. Several hours a day we're meditating. The rest of the day was spent serving one another and serving the community. It was a life of simplicity, humility, and service. To my own surprise, I actually fell in love with that lifestyle. I remember feeling more satisfied and content in that monastery when I was sleeping on the floor than when we were millionaires. And that made me question things. I'm like, I couldn't figure it out. Like, why is this? Why am I feeling complete now? And I didn't feel that completeness when we were millionaires. That was the first time I'd experienced something like that, because the goal of life for everyone is always just to be a millionaire, or just to have as much money as possible. So it gave me a lot to think about. So I ended up spending 6 months in India, came back to the US, moved into a monastery in New York City. I know it's the last place you think about moving into how many have been to New York City? Okay, a few more people. Our monastery, where I stayed, was on the Lower East Side of New York. You've been there, it's an exciting place. It's like Venice Beach without the beach, right? So our monastery, the establishment right next to us, like the walls touch, was a tattoo shop. The next 3 establishments were bars and restaurants. Across the street, there was an underground nightclub. Don't know what happened in there. Let your imagination go wild. Right next to that was a funeral home. And then there were pizza shops and bagel shops. See, New York is great in that, if you're feeling spiritual, you can go to a monastery. Want to get a tattoo? Right next door. Need to get drunk? Right next door. Need a pizza? Right there. If you're about to die, there's a funeral home there too. Everything birth to death in each block, right? Everything can be taken care of in one block of New York City. So that's where I decided to spend a few extra months. Ended up spending a total of 15 years living as a monk in New York. That wasn't part of my plan. That's not what I imagined I would do when I was living in New York, when I was experimenting living in the monastery. But that's where life took me. And we don't always know where life is going to take us, right? It's an incredible journey. wherever you think you're going to be, it's going to be very different 5 years from now. I never thought, I grew up, I usually don't mention this, but I grew up absolutely terrified of public speaking. 100% terrified. Could not get up in front of people, and I avoided it all throughout high school. Like, I just didn't do it. Somehow, life took me in a direction where now that's what I do all the time. Right? So you don't know where you're going to be. So keep your mind open about that. So I do have a couple of pictures of me as a monk, because I'm thinking maybe you won't believe me. And maybe you're thinking I'm just coming up with this story. But there's a couple pictures of me here as a monk when I was a monk. And one of them is a picture of me as a monk in India and the other as a monk in New York. I'm not sure if you can tell which one's New York, which one's India, but I think you can figure it out.
Why did I leave the monastic life? I left the monastic life almost 8 years ago. I wanted to move on with my life. I wanted to take the things that I had learned in the monastery, take it into the corporate environment. Because when I was a monk, I was doing a lot of teaching on meditation and mindfulness and stress management at Columbia University to students, at New York University, and also traveling around the country speaking on college campuses. I wanted to take everything I'd learned into the corporate environment, so that was one of the reasons I left the monastic life. And for the last 8 years, that's what I've been doing. I've been speaking in organizations pretty much all over the world. And one of the key messages that I took away from the monastery, since we're going to talk about mindfulness, it's so important that we understand how our mind functions. What is our mind? It's a big and interesting question if you think about it. Like, really, what is the mind? Because you can't see it with an MRI, with any kind of X-ray. You can't see the mind. You can see the brain, but you can't see the mind. Well, I like to think of the mind like a smart device. Now, smart devices were invented not too long ago, but this smart device has been around for ages. We've had this smart device since we were in the wombs of our mothers. And it's been around for thousands of years. And what happens on your smart device when you have too many apps open? What happens? It slows down, right? Drains the battery. According to psychology today, an average person has between 25,000 and 50,000 thoughts a day. That's 1,000 to 2,000 thoughts an hour. So your smart device has approximately 1,000 to 2,000 thoughts an hour. Now, what do you think that's doing to us? It's draining us. It's exhausting us. Sometimes you can just feel exhausted and you feel like you haven't done that much because of the apps are just going crazy. We don't know how to close out these apps. No one has taught us. It's like getting a very complicated machine and not being given an instruction manual. And that's what happens when we come into this world. We're not given an instruction manual how to close the apps up from this smart device. And it's the most important instruction manual that we need, actually. Because if you close out the apps that you don't need, imagine how much more focused you can be while you're doing whatever you're doing. Whether you're doing your homework, whether you're working on some project, or you're having a conversation with somebody, you can be so much more focused and also more rejuvenated and more energized and not so distracted. Anybody ever struggle with a distracted mind? Everyone struggles with a distracted mind. I'm sure even right now, you guys have all thought about some things. Maybe dinner, maybe breakfast, something you're thinking about, right? Because our mind's always doing a bunch of different things. So, and our mind is going in two different directions. A lot of times it's in the past, a lot of times it's planning the future. So, how many of you think you spend more time thinking about the past? How many of you think you spend more time planning the future? So generally what happens, the younger you are, the more you're thinking about the future. The older you are, the more you spend time thinking about the past. So, and what happens, unfortunately, our mind spends a majority of its time thinking about the negative things that have happened to us in the past. It's very hard for us to forget the painful things that have happened or the bad treatment that we received from others. How many of you still remember something painful that happened over 5 or 10 years ago? Still recall it once in a while. And still affects you, right? Your emotions and mood, it still affects you. It's really hard for us to let go of pain that we've gone through. How many of you have done this? Raise your hand if you've done this, where maybe you had an argument with someone and later in the day you started replaying the whole argument all over again in your head? How many have done that before? That really fun and mature activity, right? And then, has anyone done this where you add new dialogue into that replay? Yeah, that's a lot of fun, right? That's a great use of our energy. Because what happens is we get ourselves upset all over again. It's not that person now doing it to us. Now it's just us. It's me and my mind getting me all worked up and all upset all over again. And we do this and then we'll replay it again and then again the next day and all the things we could have said and should have said. So our mind, it's wasting so much of our valuable mental and emotional energy, isn't it? Imagine how much more we could do with a mind that's properly trained. Something to think about. How many of you have done this where you think about the future and you come up with a worst case scenario and cause yourselves like anxiety because of that? Oh my God, if this doesn't happen, if I don't pass this test, if I don't get this in on time, what's going to happen if I don't do well on this job interview? So, point is, it's okay to prepare, it's okay to plan for the future, but there's no need to come up with worst case scenarios because it doesn't do us any good. And one thing we can do is whenever we catch ourselves thinking about something negative from the past or coming up with a worst case scenario, you can literally press pause on that thought. Just tell yourself, I'm not going to let this thought play out right now. You have the power, just like you put the brakes on the car, you can actually put the brakes on your mind. Say, no, we're not. Just like you train a dog. No, we're not doing that, right? It's actually, you got to train. It's like a puppy. If you don't train a puppy, it's going to make a mess all over your house, isn't it? So you want to train it. So if we don't train this puppy or a smart device, whatever, it's going to create a mess in our life. And nobody wants to live with a messy mind. It's like a roommate that never shuts up, right? Maybe some of you can relate to that. I don't know. So mindfulness can help us train our mind. So here's one definition I like of mindfulness. Becoming aware of one's thoughts and emotions and bringing our mind to the present moment. It's the act of getting in touch with oneself. What does all that mean, right? Because our mind is in the past and the future. It's hardly ever here. This is the moment that we actually only have some control over. The past is gone. We can't change it. The future is completely unknown. We have no idea what's going to happen. Only thing we can do is the present moment. So it's training our mind to come back to the present moment, to keep doing what we're doing right now. And if we focus on the present properly, then naturally our future is going to be, there's a higher chance of success that we'll have in the future if we focus on the present moment. Right? If you're focusing on the present moment, then the greater chance that you'll have more success in the future, because then you'll do what you're doing now in the best possible way, instead of just thinking about the future. It's like you're driving a car and you're going to the grocery store. You're not always telling yourself, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to the grocery store, because then you may run the stop sign. You may run a traffic light because you're not paying attention in the present moment. Right? So that's something to think about. And also the act of getting in touch with oneself. So this is really important because we're going to talk about mindful leadership, and a lot of you are going to end up in leadership positions. What does that mean, right? To be in touch with your own emotions. So if, let's say, you've gotten into an argument with somebody at home and now all of a sudden you have to go to work. You're upset already, right? Because you had an argument. Especially with family, they really weigh heavily in the mind. And now you go to work, or you go to school and you have a team project that you're working on. You're carrying that baggage, that argument, those negative emotions with you when you interact with the people you're about to interact with, right? You can't just like shed them all of a sudden. You take them with you. And everybody feels it. They see that you're down, that you don't have the same energy. So if you are aware that you are actually feeling negative or you're feeling angry or upset, in that moment you can actually just take a few deep breaths. Tell yourself that I need to calm down right now. I'm not in the best frame of mind to go into this meeting or this job interview or whatever you're about to do. It's not going to have a positive result, so I need to take a moment for myself so that I can bring my best self forward. But if you're not aware of your emotions, and with all that frustration, anger, you just walk in and like, okay, I got to go do this. No, you need to take a moment is what you need to do, actually. So that's what this definition means, getting in touch with ourselves so that we understand that I need to take a moment right now to prepare myself for the next thing that I'm about to do. Especially when you're working in an environment where you're working with teams and other colleagues, and you have a meeting or you're working with clients, you have to have a clear mind to do that. You have to have a clear mind. So when it comes to mindful leadership, one key factor is leading by example. I think we've all seen, leaders that say something but don't follow through on what they themselves, telling everyone else to do, but they're not doing it themselves. And the two examples from history that I feel are very powerful in terms of leading by example are Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. They both personally led the marches for freedom. They didn't sit back in a comfortable room while everyone else went out on the marches. And this is one thing we have to keep in mind as we enter positions of leadership, that we have to do the things that we're asking others to do. Otherwise, it's very disconnecting. You really disconnect from people when people feel like, I'm being told to do this, but I don't see the leaders doing it. There's a real big disconnect that forms. So in whatever capacity you're functioning even now, make sure you're leading by example. If you expect people to go to a higher level, don't tell them. Do it. Show it to them by your own example. That's the best way. Because words are good, but if you don't do it, if they don't see you behaving in the right way, then they're not going to want to follow that example, right? I think some of you might have seen this diagram before, this graphic, whereas the upper portion shows a boss is telling everyone else what to do, whereas the leader jumps out front and says, let's do this together. It's so important to be accessible as a leader, where the team feels that that the leader is connected with them, that the leader is accessible, that it's not that everyone's here and the leader's way up there. So as we enter those leadership positions, we want to make sure that we are accessible, right? That people feel connected to us. And not that we're, again, everyone else is doing something and I'm doing something completely different. Very, very important. And here's a good example. Well, here's another one. The boss uses people just to get things done, and a leader develops people, waters them. A leader, true leader, doesn't feel threatened when someone under them starts to succeed. Because a lot of times what happens in a corporate environment is when someone starts to move up, the leaders want to push them down. That's not the kind of leaders we want to be. We want to let them grow, because what's meant to be mine will be mine. No one's going to take my stuff. I can't take anyone else's stuff. We have to understand that what is meant to be mine will be mine, and no one else can take it from me. And if someone does take it, it wasn't meant to be yours. It doesn't mean that we don't fight to keep what's ours, but ultimately we also have that detachment that if it's gone, it wasn't meant to be mine. So if we're going to be in those leadership roles, really we want to help people grow and flourish. Right? That's very important. I like this example of Haruka Nishimatsu. He's a former CEO of Japan Airlines. He had a very interesting and unique way of leading the organization when he was a CEO. His main thing was he was very humble as a leader, and he wanted to be very accessible. And the way he did this, he wouldn't sit in an office. He sat in an open space with his colleagues. No big corner office, just in an open space, working alongside his colleagues, so that the colleagues could come up and talk to him, share ideas, share concerns. He didn't separate himself from the rest of the workforce. You could see him walking into airplanes after flights, helping the flight attendants put away the magazines even, just like really down to earth. And because of that behavior, everyone respected him so much. Everybody really cared for him a lot. One time when the company wasn't doing so well, and he had to give a pay cut to a large number of the workforce, he gave himself a pay cut too. Just to communicate that, we're going to share the rewards, but we'll also share the sacrifice. Because that's not what happens usually. Everyone else has to do the sacrifice, where the leaders get richer and richer. Like that creates not such a positive environment in that particular space. So these are things to think about, that even in our life right now, am I leading by example? For your fellow classmates, for your family members, for your neighbors, for your society, am I leading by example? It starts now. If we start leading by example now, that's when we'll lead by example when we get into the workplace. So think about the things you do in life and think about, are we leading by example? Are we accessible? If we succeed, do we become arrogant or do we remain humble and calm about it and grateful? Something to think about. A very important component of mindful leadership is appreciation. How does it feel when we're not appreciated? Any answers? How does it feel when we're not appreciated? It's not a rhetorical question. I'm actually hoping for some responses here. How does it feel when you worked really hard to get something done and no one says anything? Get angry? Okay. What else?
Doesn't feel like you contribute any value to anything.
Yeah, it feels like you didn't really contribute anything valuable, even though you might have, right? Okay. What else? I'm sure we've all experienced a time when we did something and we didn't get appreciated, right? How else do you feel? You feel motivated? You feel like putting in that much effort the next time? Definitely not, right? How does it feel when we are appreciated? How do you feel when you're appreciated? When someone tells you that you did an amazing job? Worthy? What else? Encouraged? Right? Encouraged, motivated, inspired. You feel valued, feel recognized, you feel part of the team, you feel seen, you feel human. And what does that make you want to do? You want to be more loyal to that organization, right? Where you're recognized and valued. What do you do when, this is something to think about. How do we appreciate people when they do a good job? And this is a skill and trait and hobby, or habit, I should say, habit, that we can start developing right now. Maybe some of you already have it, but if not, it's something to really think about. How do I appreciate people around me that do a good job? If you have some tips, I'd like to hear. What do you do when you hear somebody or see somebody doing a good job? Anything? Pat them on the back at least? Yeah. You thank them, right? That's powerful. So at least I want you to think about this. It's so valuable that we are actually learning to appreciate now. It could be your classmate. If somebody said something in class and you liked it, that's good that you took it home with you, but go up to them, even if it's a stranger, hey, I really appreciate your comment. I learned something from that. You'll be amazed. You've just built a new friend. You've just built a trust. And that's going to come in really handy when you enter the organization and you enter corporate America. Because that's where it's going to really build teams, when people can appreciate one another. And if you end up in a leadership role, it's absolutely crucial. It's one of the biggest things you do as a leader, is to appreciate the people that are giving their hard-earned time. The most valuable thing that we have is our time and energy. They're giving that to the corporation. They need to feel appreciated. A paycheck is good, but it's not good enough. Paycheck is not good enough. We're human beings. We need to be valued. So I really want you to start thinking about appreciating your friends when they do something nice, appreciate your classmates, appreciate your siblings, and even your parents. Even your parents, especially your parents. So it's a habit. It may feel awkward. It may feel weird. But if you can develop this habit now, when you enter the workplace, it's going to come in so handy. It's going to come in incredibly handy. And train yourself to look for the good things other people are doing. Look for them. We just think about, oh, my life, my clothes, my grades, my. What? But there's so many other people putting in so much work. There's so many people struggling with so much in their lives. Let's pay attention to what other people are doing. That's what leadership is about. Paying attention to what others are doing and appreciating whatever they're doing. Very important. Very, very important. Can you think of, in your mind right now, a couple of people you need to appreciate? Just take a moment and think of a couple of people, a couple of family members, friends, colleagues, or classmates that you'd like to appreciate. They've just been nice to you. They've done some good things. Maybe they haven't done good things for you specifically. Maybe they did something good for the community. Just think of a couple of names that you'd like to appreciate. And I'm going to give you a little homework assignment. It's very easy. I won't even know if you've done it or not. By the end of next week, just appreciate those people, either through a text, a quick email, in person, phone call. Got it? How many think they can do that? Few people? Cool. You'll see how powerful it is when you do actually do that. Some research on appreciation. The Huffington Post says appreciation motivates employees to work harder, and it keeps workers from developing a wandering eye. That means they're not putting their resume up on LinkedIn, they're not talking to recruiters, because they're happy where they are. When we're not happy, we want to get out of there right away. Especially at times when we have to give negative feedback. If you're in a leadership position, you're going to have to give some negative feedback sometimes. That constructive criticism, it never feels good to receive it. Even though it's constructive, we don't like being told what to do. We don't like being told we did something wrong. But you're going to have to. So appreciation. So we have an emotional bank account with every single person we interact with. Yeah, so you have a bank account with everybody that you interact with. I like to think of appreciation as the positive deposits you make into that bank account, and criticisms and feedback as a withdrawal from that bank account. In any bank account that we have, financial or whatever, don't we want more deposits and withdrawals? I think we'll agree on that. We all want more deposits and withdrawals. So why not make more deposits than withdrawals in our personal and professional relationships? You'll see how much further those relationships actually go. And especially when you have to give that negative feedback, they'll be able to take it much better if they know that you've also given a lot of positive feedback, because now you've built a cushion. Something to really think about. Because criticism, giving that is easy. Appreciation is a little bit harder because you have to think a little bit more about the good things that someone's doing. Wharton Business School did an interesting item of research. They were going to make fundraising calls to raise money. They divided the fundraising team into two groups. One group made calls like they normally would. The other group received a call from the director appreciating what they were about to do. The second group that received the call, appreciating, they made 50% more phone calls on their own. Just because they were happy that, hey, we got noticed. So to get employees to work harder and be more inspired, all people need is a little appreciation. It's a simple secret about human beings, that's it, right? It's a simple thing, and we make it much more complicated. Here's an interesting example of appreciation. Sheldon Yellen, CEO of Belfour Holdings. He has 8,000 employees. Guess how many birthday cards he writes each year? 8,000. He's a CEO. You're like, how in the world does he get time to do this? Well, he understands the value that it has when an employee gets a birthday card from the CEO. Makes them feel valued. So basically, whenever he goes on a trip, he gets on an airplane, he takes a stack of birthday cards with him, and he starts filling them out. Amazing. For his 60th birthday, every employee sent him a card. So he literally got 8,000 birthday cards. But you see, when you have an environment like that, it's so powerful. You basically created a positive, mindful workplace culture where people are trusting one another, they're caring for one another, Look, you're going to spend more than half of your waking time at work. Half of your life is going to be in the workplace. So don't you want to have positive relationships when you're spending that much time with people? Some of us are going to spend more time with our colleagues than with our family members. So it makes sense, and it all starts with us. We can't say, hey, you know what, I'm going to wait for them to start appreciating. Why? Are you going to wait for someone else to get a raise before you try to get a raise? I don't think so. So you start. You take the first step. If they don't reciprocate, that's okay. Continue to appreciate. Everybody notices that. Everyone will notice everything positive that you do. But make it genuine. Make it specific. Not just for the sake of doing it, but really feel and understand what you're appreciating about this individual. They'll understand it. According to the Harvard Business Review, when we have positive social connections in the workplace, there are some amazing results that we can experience. Check these results out. They're amazing what happens when you have positive social connections in the workplace. People get sick less often. Now, what does that mean? Your immune system is actually working better when you have good positive social connections at work. It affects your immune system. So basically, positive social connections at work, at home, anywhere, it improves your physical health. People get less depressed. That means mentally and emotionally, you're also healthier. It's amazing what good positive relationships can do for us. It's phenomenal. We can learn faster and remember longer. We display more mental acuity, and we perform better on the job. So good relationships affect us physically, mentally, emotionally, intellectually, every which way you can imagine. Positive relationships affect us from head to toe, inside and out. Just think about how valuable that one simple concept of human life is. Having positive social connections. And appreciation is a big part of that. Valuing others who are contributing to our life. Even if they're not contributing to our life, they're doing something good in life, value them, appreciate them, make it a part of who you are. You're the person who always appreciates people. You'll just have the most friends. It's kind of simple. That's what'll happen. People will trust you more because of that, because they realize you see the good in them. Who doesn't want to be around people who see the good in others? That's a good person to be around. Something to think about. And especially when when someone is down, someone's not performing well, someone's having a tough day, someone's going through a challenge or difficulty, what is our response? Do we sit back? Okay, I'm not going to get involved in that. Or maybe now that they're down, I can rise. I'm going to take advantage of this and get ahead. I don't know if that's how we want to be. I know we see that from unfortunately, our politicians who like to step on each other to get ahead. And that's the example they're setting for the youth. And I think it's an embarrassment. And they all do this pretty much. But that's not the example we want to see from leadership. We don't want to take advantage of someone's fall to rise. We want to help others rise and let that build our own character, and then we'll rise when the time is right. So I found this really cool video that sort of communicates this point, and I thought I could share it with you as an inspiration. Now, interesting, he's the star of the whole show. Everybody in the arena is there to see him. Her, no one even knows her name. Nobody knows her name. No one will ever know her name. Right? And he's the star. He's world famous. She's completely unknown. He's playing a game. He's at work. And yet, look what he's doing. He's stopping what he's doing, And she didn't drop that. The ref bumped into her and made her spill all the drink. And she's in the front row where all the stars are sitting. So that's kind of embarrassing then in front of everyone. And the ref just kind of walks away, right? He bumps her and then she drops this and like everyone's looking at her. And yet, somehow in the middle of all that, LeBron James had the foresight, the presence of mind, like, you know what? This poor lady, she's totally embarrassed. He made her life right here. This is a moment, she might forget her family's names and whatever. She'll never forget this, though. She'll never forget this particular moment of her life, right? When someone that high up comes down to help us, that's a powerful thing. So I hope you'll remember that no matter how high you climb up, and I hope one day you all climb up to very high levels, that you won't forget the people who are cleaning the offices or doing the simpler tasks. They're not any less valuable. If they didn't do what they're doing, your place would be a mess. They're not lesser than us. They're human beings who are doing a particular job, and if they're doing it well, we can say something to them. We absolutely should. And that is a true sign of a leader, somebody who's picking others up, especially when others are not doing well, because that's a time when we can criticize them. Oh, they're not performing, we should get rid of them. What kind of a mentality is that? Would we fire our own kid if they're not doing well? Like, probably not. Well, let's try to involve people, include them, make them feel valued, and if they're struggling, really be there for them. A very important aspect of life and mindful leadership is communication. 4 things to think about when we communicate: email, in person, whatever it is. What you're saying, how you're saying it. Think about the impact it's going to have on the person hearing your communication, and think about how it's going to impact your relationship with them. Very important to think about this. Sometimes, in the heat of the moment, we want to respond to an angry email and give them a piece of our mind. Show them how we were right and they were wrong. Bad time to respond to an email. You never want to do that. Let it sit there, cool off, go for a jog, wait a day. You'll be grateful that you did wait because your mind will cool down. You'll come up with a better response. I'm going to share with you a communication formula. And if you remember this communication formula, I guarantee all your relationships will improve. Who's ready to see this communication formula? It's going to change your life. You ready? Are you ready for a life-changing moment? Right here. We were born with 2 of these and 1 of these. And by nature's miraculous arrangement, which one did nature leave open and which one did nature leave closed? Something to think about, right? Can you imagine if we were just born with like closed ears and we had to open them every single time we had to listen? But the mouth was just kind of open all the time? It's just like walking around with open mouths. But I think it's just funny, but it's also interesting that we were born with 2 of these and 1 of these, and sometimes we use this twice as much as we use these. And the ears are always open. That means we should be listening twice as much. If we listen to others and understand others, if we try to listen to understand people as opposed to listening to respond to people. I know I'm guilty of that. Someone's talking, I've got a brilliant idea, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to communicate this idea, and I've stopped listening, basically. Because our brain can't do 2 things at once, by the way. In case you're confused about that idea, our brain doesn't multitask. Research has shown our brain does 1 task at a time. It does not multitask. If we could multitask, if we could do 2 things at the same time, then texting and driving would not be a problem. It would not be a criminal thing to text and drive. But we can't do that at all. We've proven that really well. We're killing ourselves, but we won't stop texting. So listening to understand and not to respond. Right? So powerful, powerful, simple way, especially if you enter a leadership role or if you're working on projects with others, hear them out. See what they have to say. You may not agree with it, and that's all right. That makes the idea flourish when sometimes people disagree in a constructive and a positive way. It's okay if they see things differently. They're supposed to see things differently. They've got different eyes than you. They've got different life experiences than you. They're supposed to see things differently than us. And that's a good thing. Don't be threatened when people have different ideas than yours. Welcome that. It's going to be very useful when you work in teams in an organization. The way people are raised culturally and in their family and the society, everyone's got a different way of thinking and behaving. So instead of judging, let's try to understand. Another few items. When we communicate, do it truthfully. And the truth can be brutal and can hurt, so make sure that it's beneficial for that situation. If you're going to communicate the truth, make sure it helps the situation, it doesn't make it worse. And so that's, every situation is different, so you have to think about it. Try to communicate in a way that doesn't disturb the other person, similar to what I said earlier, how it's going to impact them. Is it going to disturb their mind? Because when you receive communication, email or something, I'm sure we've all received it, that disturbs us, it's hard to get work done at that point, isn't it? Because your mind's like upset, you can't focus anymore. You might even make a mistake because you're like processing the emotions that just you're dealing with because of this email or whatever. So we can either make people more productive by communicating positively, or if you're like in a leadership role and you send a negative message to 50 people and now they're all upset, you just got 50 people not being productive at all. So whose fault is it at that point? Something to think about. And if we can, maybe we can communicate in a way that's pleasing. May not always be possible to do all four, but I think we can definitely try to do the first three. I think we can try. It takes a lot of thought. It requires a lot of mindfulness, but I think it can be done. It does require thoughtfulness. Finally, just recapping a little, don't communicate when you're angry. Don't correct people publicly. Leaders, unfortunately, do this all the time, and it's ugly, and it's embarrassing, and you've totally shot the trust that you had with that person. If you end up in a leadership role, don't let your ego be the leader. Even though you can correct somebody publicly, have respect for them, and then they'll respect you. A disrespected employee is going to cause a lot of damage to that organization. Ooh, you don't know all the things they can do. Think about it. Address concerns privately. So mindfulness and meditation, it's not just a spiritual thing. There's a lot of research showing that secular practice of mindfulness can help us in so many ways. There was a nice article in Forbes that explained that mindfulness can make you more productive. Because if you can close out the apps in your mind, then you can get more done. Leave open the apps that you need open. According to the New York Times, it can enhance creativity and memory. According to Psychology Today, it can decrease anxiety, depression, and stress. Depression is on the rise. It's all about the mind. Anxiety and depression are all about the mind. I'm not saying mindfulness is going to completely get rid of them. It can decrease the impact of it. And according to the Harvard Business Review, mindfulness can boost emotional intelligence, giving us the ability to understand other people's perspective. So much in life is about understanding other people, right? We don't understand others. We're quick to judge. And so how can we form relationships when we're all busy judging each other? Better to try to understand one another. And really, it's no longer for monks. These are not monks here. People of all walks of life. Professional athletes are using, I don't know, maybe many of you probably saw Kobe Bryant talked about it, Michael Jordan talked about it, LeBron. A lot of people are practicing mindfulness. Why? It allows you to be in the moment. Because even during a game, ref gives you a bad call and you just keep thinking about that. You got a game to play, but you can't get your mind out of the past. The coach yells at you, you just keep thinking about that. Well, let's get back into the game right now, but you can't. Mindfulness helps you come back into the present moment. It's powerful. So what I want to do now is I want to teach you a little mindfulness. You didn't think I'm just going to let you leave without a little mindfulness, did you? So everybody ready to do like 5 minutes? I can show you some techniques that you can use for your studies, for your work, for your sports, for your relationships. So please go ahead and sit comfortably. You can put both feet on the floor and just close your eyes. So first of all, I'd like you to just come into the present moment. And we really, because our mind wanders so much, we're going to see if we can stay focused on this activity. Bring all of your awareness to the weight of your feet pushing down into the floor. Just focus all of your attention on your feet touching the floor. And if you notice your mind going to your to-do list, just gently bring it back. And you'll see through this exercise how quickly the mind wanders. Bring your awareness to the weight of your body, pushing down into the chair that you're sitting on. Focus all of your energy on the weight of your body, pushing down into the chair. Become aware of your hands and fingers and how they're situated. Make sure they're relaxed. Make sure they're not tensed. Now I want you to take 5 deep breaths, and each breath I want you to take in such a way that you fill up your lungs completely, deeper than your average breath that you take. And each breath you take in, I want it to go a little deeper, like take in more oxygen than the previous time. Expand your chest, expand your lungs. And when you exhale, I want you to exhale thoroughly and completely emptying out your lungs. So nice, thorough inhalation, full and complete exhalation. And what this deep breathing does, it actually helps calm our emotions. So if you've been through a difficult moment, this actually will calm your emotions. It can also help regulate blood pressure. Stay focused. Try not to let your mind wander off. Now I want you to take the next 5 breaths in and out just through your nasal passages. Breathe in and out just through your nose if that's possible. And feel the cool breath entering your nose. Notice how cool it is. And when you breathe out through the nose, you'll notice that the same breath is warmer. So feel the cool breath going in and the warm breath going out. Try not to plan. Stay in the present. Now I want you to bring your awareness to your forehead and bring all of your attention in between your eyebrows. And from here, I want you to look inward into your mind, and I want you to become aware of some of the prominent thoughts that have been going through your mind over the last couple of days. What are some things that you keep thinking about over and over again? I want you to become aware of them. I don't want you to start planning, and I don't want those thoughts to impact you. Observe your thoughts like you would observe fish inside a fish tank. Keep a distance from your thoughts. Now take a deep breath in. Fill up your lungs. When you exhale, I want you to breathe out all of the thoughts you recognize. Just let everything go. Empty out your mind. Close out the apps. Take another deep breath in. This time, as you exhale, breathe out any tension you're holding in your face. Relax your eyes, relax your mouth, relax your jaw. Let your mouth drop down. Let your tongue drop down to the bottom of the mouth. And drop your shoulders down as well. Now bring your awareness into the region of the heart and see if you can actually pick up on the heartbeat. That requires a lot of concentration. while we're in this space in the heart, I want you to think of 3 things that are happening in your life right now that you're grateful for. You may be going through some difficulties or problems and challenges, but I want you to find and focus on the 3 things that are happening that are positive in your life. It could be little things or big things, whatever they are. Gratitude is an amazing way of shifting our mindset and our mood. Whenever we're feeling down or upset, we can take a moment and think of a few things that are going right in our life and be grateful for them. It's a great habit to develop. Now I want you to think of 3 people in your life that have encouraged you, inspired you, and supported you. Appreciate their presence in your life and wish them well in their endeavors. And now I'd like you to think of one quality that you would like to develop within yourself that you feel will make you a better human being. Maybe you want to be more forgiving. Maybe you want to be more patient with others. Maybe you just want to be kinder, more tolerant. Think of one thing that you feel will make you a better human being. A thing that you would really like to work on for yourself. Just like we plan our financial goals, academic goals, we also have to focus on our goals of personal growth. Personal growth doesn't happen automatically if we don't meditate on it and try for it, endeavor for it. Take another deep breath in. Exhale. Bring your awareness to your eyes. Take the next 10 seconds to slowly and gradually begin to open your eyes. Welcome back, everyone. We have landed. We have reached our destination. Be honest, how many of you dozed off a little? I was up here watching, so I know. It's okay, it's normal. It's the end of the week, you're tired, and what basically I was trying to do is shut down your apps so you actually can't sleep. Sometimes we can't sleep because we keep thinking about stuff. So you can see 10 minutes, what it can do, the power it has of relaxing our brain and our mind. Anybody want to share what they feel like after this practice? Yes?
Like empty, but in a good way.
Okay. Yeah. Empty in a good way, though. Like you emptied out the apps. Mind's clear. Thank you. Anyone else? How do you feel right now? Yes. Oh, your headache went away. That's nice, see? And you didn't have to pop a pill either, right? Just a little meditation. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I've heard people say my neck feels better, my back is not aching right now. I've had people tell me all kinds of things from like a 10-minute session. So it's amazing. Make the connection, right? The power your mind has over your body. The stress and anxiety here literally affects everything. Your eyes, your jaw, your skin, your heart, your bones, your joints, your muscles. There's nothing that stress doesn't impact. And when you can de-stress up here, the rest of it also follows right along, actually. So that's why this is the most powerful thing, and we need to really work on this thing. Anyone else? How do you feel? Also want to open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions, you can, do you want to, are there any questions that were submitted or? Yeah, okay, one more slide forward, here we go. So these are my 2 books. The one on the left is about my journey as a monk, and the other one, Closing the Apps, is a follow-up to the talks that I give. So it just goes deeper into everything that I talked about, filled with lots of practical tips on how to be mindful. And if you want to stay connected, if you aren't comfortable asking a question right now, you're welcome to reach out to me on social media. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Feel free to follow me, connect with me, ask me a question. I promise to respond. A little bit better on LinkedIn than I am on Instagram, but feel free to connect with me there. And the books are available on Amazon. So yeah, any questions? I'd love to take your questions, see if I can give you an answer that'll be satisfying. Yeah.
How do people kind of use your teachings in the sports world for like competition purposes?
So how do people use these teachings in the sports world? Well, from what I know, I mean, I haven't personally like taught athletes. I do more of this in corporations, but the principle is the same. The point is, in a very competitive environment, you always have to stay focused in the moment, right? Like, I remember like when I used to play tennis, they always think like you got to keep your eye on the ball. If you don't, if you start thinking about too much about what you're going to do, too many moves ahead, then you're not looking at the ball anymore. Your mind's thinking something else. And so therefore, it really helps you stay focused in that moment. Like, I'm doing this. My next move is just to hit this ball. That's my only goal right now. Everything else comes after this hit. Like, or if you're going to shoot, like, this is it. I got to focus on this right now, nothing else. And then you think about the next thing. So the key thing is to intensify our focus, but also through the breathing to calm us down. Because once you relax, you can get clearer perspective on what's happening. Because once we get angry and tensed up, you actually lose clarity of what's going on around us. Everything seems worse than it actually is. So for two things, to relax and calm the mind, and to increase our focus and be more in the moment. Because that's the only moment, remember, we have control over. What's done is done. Living in the past is affecting you from getting what needs to be done completed, right? So I hope that was helpful. Anyone else? There's a question? Oh, one more slide. Okay.
I think. Hello? There we go. So this question is, what advice do you have for students who are trying to figure out what to do for a career?
Career advice?
Yeah.
From a former monk?
Yeah.
Advice for what? Well, I think that the good thing is you have time to figure things out. You do have time. Don't think you're out of time. Right? Sometimes we're in a rush to figure it out. It happens a lot. You end up getting your bachelor's degree and you realize like that's not what I want to do. Take your time to figure it out. Explore. Don't be afraid to try a few different things. You've got the options. Explore this. Check it out. Volunteer your time and work in that field a little bit for a semester, a month. Just see if you like it. Check something else out. How do you know if you come in front of a buffet, how do you know what tastes good unless you try the different options that are there? Don't feel rushed. If your friends seem like have it figured out, don't feel like you need to have it figured out simply because they have it figured out. It's okay. They're on their own journey. They may run into a brick wall 3 years from now. Hopefully that won't happen. But you don't know. Don't compare your own journey to someone else's, academically or professionally. So I would say, don't be afraid to try a few things. Right now is the best time to try. You have plenty of time. People have become millionaires in their 40s and 50s. Sometimes it takes people a while to figure it out. Right? Figure out what inspires you, what drives you, what really makes you happy when you do that kind of work. What is it that makes you feel, gives you joy inside when you do that kind of work? And you won't know if you just do one thing and you never try anything. There's no one to blame at that point. So that's what I would say. Try, and if you're curious, find somebody in that field Talk to them. Hey, can I shadow you for like a week? Can I do what you do? I just want to explore. I don't think anyone's going to say no. Find a contact, connection, someone, school could probably help. Find someone, shadow that person. It doesn't work for me, but thank you very much. Now you're going to try this, try this, try this. And then you figure out what you want to do. But don't be afraid to try. And don't be in a rush to figure out, like, oh my God, I got to do it, I got to do it, because this person's telling me I got to do it, all my friends have it figured out. It's okay. I didn't figure out I wanted to be a speaker forever. It just kind of happened to me. So keep trying. And seek help. Get guidance from people. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid. People love, I'll tell you one thing, somebody who has experience, most of the time, they really like sharing the experience with others. People like to, like, if you've become good at something and someone says, hey, how'd you become so good? Like, you feel good. You get a little ego boost, like, yeah, I became so good. Like, someone came to me for help, and you want to help. So people will generally want to help. If they become good at something and you think you may want to do that, you ask them, I think they'll be happy to help out. Give you some advice. Maybe you can shadow them. So think of, no, you're not inconveniencing them. It's your life. Ask. The worst thing they'll say is no. No, you can go to someone else. Just be courageous. Ask for help. You'll be surprised at how many people will help you. If you don't ask, you won't get. My dad says that if a baby doesn't cry, the mother won't feed it. Whichever one cries the loudest gets fed. So it's interesting, his approach, but maybe you could take that and think about that. Other questions? Anybody scan the code and type in the question?
So you have traveled all over the world and talked with hundreds, thousands of people at hundreds of organizations. What is the most common question that you're asked?
Most common.
All those presentations.
Well, sometimes it's I don't know if it's the most, but it is a common one. But people ask me, was it difficult to transition out of the monastic life? Like, people ask a personal question usually. And most transitions are difficult. They're supposed to be a little difficult because they help us grow. We don't like change and transition, but every cell in our body is new after 7 years. So our body's changing a lot every single day. So yes, it was difficult. It wasn't easy after living that life for 15 years. Like, what am I going to do now? I mean, I can't put monk on my resume. It sounds cool, but it's not going to get me a job. So it was difficult. It wasn't easy. I had to navigate that change. I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. Because 15 years in a monastery, great, you get a lot of wisdom, you meditate really well, or you think you meditate really well, but your mind still wanders all over the place. See, but I really wasn't sure, but luckily I'd done so much speaking and on stress management and mindfulness and mindfulness was becoming popular, so I was able to do that. But that's the question that people ask a lot, is that, was it difficult? I'm like, yeah, it was difficult to enter the monastery and to make that commitment. That wasn't easy either, by the way. To live with minimal possessions, no bank account for a long time, right? Just have a closet full of, 5 sets of robes. That's it. I just wore robes all the time. And so it's difficult, no relationships, right? So like, that's it. So that wasn't easy. And then leaving it, then you got used to that. And they're like, oh my gosh, that world looks pretty scary out there. So that was, it was a difficult transition. Both were. But transitions have to be there. That's just a part of life. So that's, I think, the question I get asked a lot.
All right, so this one asks, how important is travel to your personal growth? I thought that was interesting.
I think that's a great question. And I think travel is essential, absolutely essential. We have to get out of our own particular environment where we become comfortable and we are living in a certain culture. If we don't learn about other cultures and traditions, we're going to limit our own growth, especially when you work in an organization and you have people from different parts of the world. If we don't know them and we don't understand that culture, we're going to judge them and maybe fear them or have all kinds of preconceived ideas about them, the way they eat, the way they look, the way they dress, the way they talk, whatever it is. To broaden our horizons, I think it's so crucial to experience other cultures, other languages, other types of food. You know, even if you go to other parts of the world, explore their different religions, just understand how the other part of the world is living. Majority of the world's out there. We're just a minority here, right? So I think it's absolutely crucial if you want to expand on your own, just become broader, broaden your horizons. And when you enter the workplace, it's going to be important to know how people of different cultures function. It'll make you a better leader and a better colleague at that point.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight. What an important message at this time for our campus and our students. And I'm thinking a lot about what we've all been through over the last 2 years in the pandemic, and reflecting on your notes at the beginning of your talk about how important social connections are in the workplace, in our lives in general. And we're coming through a period of 2 years where the social fabric has been frayed tremendously, and there's a lot of anxiety about what does this next phase look like. And so the question I have is, as we are re-entering the workforce, as we're re-entering our classrooms in a full way, and we're dealing with the stress of this change. There was stress during the pandemic, there's stress coming out of the pandemic in terms of how we get used to relating to each other once again. What advice would you offer tonight about looking to the future as we move away from the pandemic and managing the stress that comes from having been in it and coming out of it? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you know, I think one thing is, I think we've all learned something valuable from the pandemic about ourselves. I think we've all picked up hopefully a few new skills or hobbies, or just learned about ourselves a little bit more. And so I think we have something exciting to look forward to, that hopefully we are re-entering the world with a different us than that was there a couple years ago. Hopefully we have made some progress in our own personal growth during this time. And so I think we just have a lot of positive things to look forward to, that you're bringing a whole new self forward, right? To re-engage with your classmates and your teachers and then just the world. So I think instead of being anxious about it, let's embrace it. Embracing change is not easy, but it's so powerful. It's such a way to grow if we can embrace that change. And stress is not something we can ever avoid fully. We're never, from the beginning, a child is born into this world under a stressful situation. That's why it's yelling at the top of its head. And we leave this world in a stressful situation. And there's stress throughout. But it's not a bad thing. Stress is not a bad thing. It all depends on how you see it. There is positive stress. If you see it as an opportunity to grow and mature and embrace that challenge, then you can enter it with excitement. If we enter it with fear, then we'll just be afraid and stressed in a negative way. So that positive stress helps us accomplish more. And it can also be, we can be excited about something and inspired by the change. So all depends on our attitude. Do we want to be afraid of it and fearful and stressed, or excited and inspired? That choice is completely ours. No one else makes that for us. At any given transition in life, we have a choice to be excited by it, looking forward to what's coming, or we could be afraid of it. That's something we have to decide. So, is there another one? Another question? No? Okay. Well, I just want to thank you all very much for coming here on a Friday evening after a long week and giving me your time and attention. I hope that you'll take some of these, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of these messages. I hope you'll make a note of them, the ones that inspired you. You'll put a Post-it note somewhere to breathe, to meditate, to relax, to appreciate, to communicate mindfully, to lead by example, I hope you'll do some of these things in your life. And I do hope that we'll continue to stay in touch. Maybe our paths will cross again in person, or I'm sure virtually our paths will cross through social media somehow or other. So I want to thank you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Pandit, very much for your inspiring message. Great concepts for us to think about around mindfulness and what it really means for us individually.